Do you know your nostrils flare out like little wings when you're mad? It's kind of cute.
Thanks.
Welcome to Film Church Radio. We have a very special episode for you today. My name is Brandon Ray Selman. Sitting next to me is the great, the one and only, Mr. Lewis Walker.
Wow, quite an introduction. Thank you very much.
And today we have with us a very special guest, the one and only, Zach.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Hopefully in the future, not so special, just a reoccurring cast member.
recurring character.
Exactly.
That's it.
I'd like to be the neighbor who just sort of bursts in the door, you know.
Well, actually,
Yeah.
The Kramer.
Yeah. So, Zach, welcome to the pod. Thank you for being a part of it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Last time me and Brandon did this, we talked a little bit about kind of where we come from in terms of film, like what we like and stuff like that. So, just tell us a little bit about your film going past. Where does it all begin?
Oh, well, it all begins probably in like 1999, 2000. I mean, my parents were sort of film goers. My mom took me to see movies that I probably shouldn't have been seeing when I was like 10, 11 years old. Big Lebowski and There's Something About Mary. But like my parents were Coen Brothers fans. They were Robert Altman fans. So I sort of had that kind of embedded into me, I think. But in the early 2000s, I found access to the Independent Film Channel, and I just watched it constantly. And in watching that, I kind of just got sucked into this world of movies. And I think like I was kind of getting into it in like 99. I think I remember like The Sixth Sense being one of the first movies that kind of made me recognize like filmmaking, I guess. Before that, I'd been kind of I had like Tim Burton was my favorite director when I was a little kid, you know. But oddly enough, South Park was actually kind of a big influence on me in becoming interested in film because when I was a kid, I was allowed to watch things that weren't really kid appropriate.
Yeah.
I started watching South Park when I was like 10. And I remember reading that the creators of the show, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, went to film school. And that was like my first, like, there's something called film school. And that was kind of my first, like, opening my eyes into, like, oh, people study movies and stuff like that. So it sort of began there. And it's kind of, I don't know if you'd say I've gone like downhill ever since or up. I don't know. I've gotten obsessed, you know, in ways that are hard to explain. Collecting DVDs and stuff like that. And I've gone through ebbs and flows, like where I was like going to the theater all the time, and periods where I wasn't seeing a lot of new movies, and periods where I was only watching old movies, stuff like that. So
Cool.
but you always find yourself coming back to the synagogue of cinema.
yeah, I mean, eventually, yeah, you do.
Yeah.
It's hard not to.
Sweet.
Yeah. Well, for everyone that's listening, that this could be the first time you're tuning in, just a little bit about the pod. So we are Film Church Radio. We're going to sit here and talk about a specific movie and treat cinema as a religion. Treat it as the thing that kind of keeps us going, the communal feel of watching a film, talking about a film, sharing ideas and, you know, all that kind of stuff together is what we're all about right here. So thank you for tuning in.
Yeah, thank you guys.
And let's jump into the movie.
Yeah, so today we watched Play Misty for Me from 1971, directed by Clint Eastwood, his directorial debut.
Yes, I remember you saying that you were like interested in directors' first films.
Yeah, you're very right about that. Yeah, and this was interesting. Now I haven't seen all of Clint Eastwood's movies, and they're kind of hit or miss for me, which I feel like they are for a lot of people. But this was interesting. It was him. It was very much him trying to prove himself as a director. I feel like it because it had this. It had so many filmy kind of things about it that were beautiful cinematic things, and then very like Hitchcocky things about it, and I mean, he had to have been a huge star already by then.
Yes.
So I'm sure that everybody just went to see this movie in droves. I don't know. I don't know the history on this movie. We're doing something unique today where we actually just watched the movie and we're recording this podcast right after viewing it. So we haven't done any research on the movie.
Yeah.
So we'll probably do a little bit of research while we're talking about it. But this is just coming from, just watching the movie. I feel like a lot of people probably went to see this movie when it first came out and were just like, oh my God, Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
He's amazing. He's a director now, and he's brilliant. But and like he is brilliant, I guess. Some of his movies are brilliant, I think.
Yeah.
But this movie, it was going to do well, no matter what he did. I think, But because he did there's the very specific Hitchcock. There's there's lots of Hitchcock knife stabbing going on.
There is.
And this is 11 years after Psycho came out, and he even does the hand on the curtain.
Yeah.
And it's just I'm sure that I don't know. I mean, Hitchcock was a big thing back then, so I'm sure everybody got that reference, and they were just like, "Look at him referencing Hitchcock. He's a genius." Which is okay. It's not really. He's not a genius for doing that, but yeah, like I said, I'm sure he was a very lovable celebrity and
bankable,
yeah. Mm-hmm. So it was going to do well either way. Just for me personally, I did enjoy the movie a lot. I don't know. It's kind of I just love 70s movies in general, and this is a very, very 70s movie.
Yeah,
even though it's early 70s, the font of the title sequence in the beginning.
It was very Hanna-Barbera to me. I felt like it was going to be a very kind of the 70s, 80s cartoons. I was like, what are we getting into?
Yeah, I like the overall look of the movie. The font of the titles actually is probably one of the most incongruous things with the rest of the movie.
I don't know. It's for some reason I like stuff like that, I guess, coming from a design perspective, because it's as long as you commit to something.
Yeah,
I'm like,
and they
cool.
committed.
Green. Lime green. I mean,
but that was very Tarantino-esque to me, which I guess maybe lots of 70s movies did weird titles like that, and that's why he does his. But Tarantino does the same. He has the same kind of font usually on all of his movies, but it's all kind of the same kind of 70s feel. But I guess I have maybe a nostalgia for 70s title sequences, so I'm cool every time I see something like that.
Before we jump into the film itself, I know that last time we kind of talked if we'd heard about this film before, where we came upon it. So it's this was kind of one of your picks, I guess. So how did you come across Play Misty for me, or was it just
okay? It's a very bizarre story. Well, I don't know if it's very bizarre, but I maybe it's bizarre that I remember it. This is back when I was in college, and I was 20 years old, something like that. I had an acquaintance in one of these large auditorium style classrooms, where there's 100 people in the class.
Yeah.
And I had one guy that I sat with that we would chit chat. We never saw each other out of class or anything like that. And one day he just told me, we would talk about movies, and he's like, me and my roommate watched Play Misty for me. And I was like, what is that? It's Clint Eastwood's first movie Clint Eastwood directed. Oh, okay. That's it. That was the first. But then 2 weeks later, a friend of mine was doing pub trivia, and he snuck off to the bathroom, and he knew that I was into movies, so he texts me, "Do you know what the first movie Clint Eastwood directed was?" because that was the question, and he snuck off to the bathroom because nobody in his team knew. And I just learned this 2 weeks ago. Somebody told me. So the title has stuck with me ever since then. And that's like 10 years ago, maybe more. I bought it at random when I don't know, I saw it on sale and was just buying a couple of movies. I'm like, yeah, I'll get that. I've been wanting to see it. And my mom mentioned it earlier this year because the secondary lead of this film, Jessica Walters, is that right? Jessica Walters passed away. The late Jessica Walters. Jessica Walter died. And I shared an obituary on Facebook, and my mom says, yeah, I remember her from playing Misty for me. So it was kind of like fresh in my mind this year as a result of that. I've just kind of been meaning to see it ever since. Yeah. I'm a fan of Clint Eastwood's movies, the movies he's directed. There's some recency bias in terms of what I've seen. So it was nice to go all the way back to 1971 to, I guess, far back in his directorial filmography as we could go.
Yeah. What about you, Brendan?
I have never heard of this movie.
Cool. Yeah.
Clint Eastwood is just one of those people where, like, I love The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Mm-hmm. It's a great, great movie. That obviously he didn't direct it, but he stars in the movie. And I don't know where I first was introduced to Clint Eastwood. I feel like he's just one of those people that was just always around in movies and the stuff he directed. Like, people in my family were always talking about him. And so I have no idea what the first Clint Eastwood movie I saw was, but he's just one of those people where, I guess because of it, his movies are hit and miss for me. I just have never been like, oh, I need to go and watch every Clint Eastwood movie that he's made. I'm trying to think of some of the recent ones I've seen. There was the one that he did that was on the train. That came out while I was working at Studio Movie Grill.
The 1517
to
Paris.
That one. The 1517 to Paris, where he casts the actual guys, the actual veterans who were involved in the whole story. Yeah. And for obvious reasons, the acting was really bad because they weren't actors. But I mean, it was kind of cool. It was like, I mean, he's like reached this level where he can just do whatever he wants, and it's like no one else would ever give money to like put actual veterans in a movie to play something that they did in real life, So it's kind of cool that he can do that. Sully was a really good movie.
I forget that he directed that.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking about that, and that movie was solid. And just like random, like it's kind of like his movies are just random. But I'm just looking at his recent movies like American Sniper, J. Edgar. I've seen Gran Torino. I've never watched it. It was out when I was working at the theater as well, when I first started working at a theater, and I just never saw it just because because of the audience that went to see it when I was working at the theater. We're always like, this movie is so good. I'm like, if you think this movie is good, I probably don't want to watch it.
I like that one.
But yeah, it's like, it was mostly just old, like, racist white guys that were like, wow.
I remember going to a theater, I don't remember what I was going to see, but it was at the same time that Flags of Our Fathers was in theaters. And there were two old people in line ahead of me, and I just remember the guy going, two senior tickets for the movie with the soldiers in them.
Wow.
Yeah. Now that I think about it, I'm like trying to figure out where I first like saw Clint Eastwood, and like
I think it's one of those names that you just know before you know.
Exactly. Yeah,
it's like synonymous with cinema at this point. He's
been around for so long,
and that name is like, who else could pull off like Clint Eastwood as a name? Like, there's only one.
When before you're talking about like, where did I what was my history with film, and before I think I even knew that I was interested in film, I used to watch The Critic. With John Lovitz. And that's probably where I first became aware of Clint Eastwood as a persona, because there were so many movie parodies in that, and there were a lot of parodies of Clint Eastwood. I guess that show was from the early 90s, so it was kind of making fun of things that he did in the 80s. But he was caricatured on that show a lot before I ever, I think, was even aware of what they were making fun of, you know?
Yeah.
But the first Clint Eastwood movie I saw was Space Cowboys.
Okay, cool.
Saw that with my parents in theaters.
This Play Misty for me was actually the first Eastwood film that I saw.
Wow.
So before I told you guys this earlier, before I went to university, I went to study film, and my mum and dad were like, okay, before you go, we're going to pick some films for you that we think you need to watch before you go to film school. So Play Misty for me was on there. So was Misery. We watched Elephant Man, which, looking back at it, I'm like, man, these are dark films. You know, like Not Singing in the Rain, like nothing like that. It was, you know, like these really...
Do you think that was your parents trying to be like, look, if you're going to get into film, it's going to be dark?
Maybe. I mean...
I mean, it's funny that the Misery and this were one of them, because I was thinking of Misery.
Yeah, especially in the final third. Yeah, I mean... that thought crossed my mind as well. It was very... Maybe we watched this first and my mum was like, oh, Misery, I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I watched this. It must have been like 2011, maybe. So like 10 years plus ago. The only thing I could remember before we watched it was his apartment. And just... and then as soon as I saw it, I was like, it's the fact that he's got those weird... cobbles in the middle of his front room.
Like a lagoon in the middle.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to like hop across rocks to get across.
It's like his front door.
Yeah, but I couldn't remember much else about it, which is kind of why I wanted to watch it today. I was like, I want to revisit this. I want to see.
So that was how long ago?
Like 10, 11 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so now you've had like this whole like journey of film watching, and now you're like brought back to this point.
Yeah.
What'd you think?
So okay, so first, like just from like instant reaction to it was, it wastes no time. Like there is not even that slightest hint of like that is not the girl at the bar. Do you know what I mean? It's not like who could it be? It's like, hey, it's me. From the first instant, you're like, okay, cool,
do it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, okay, I guess this is where we're going. And at that point, I was like, where are we going to spend the next 90 minutes of this movie? Because I thought that would be like the hook, is you'll find out halfway through, and then that's when it starts to escalate.
Right.
I think it moves really quickly. I don't think it's boring at all. I think the characters are very one-dimensional.
Yeah.
There's not much to anybody. They're just like...
I'm a man, you're a woman.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm a police officer, so I'm going to be dry, but really like you, kind of. You know,
I'm a public servant.
Yeah, exactly. It's, you know... Clint Eastwood just plays a guy who is obsessed with sex. He talks about it to every character all the time. He's like, hey, you had roommates. I slept with them. Sorry. You should get over that. You were to blame too, because you had roommates. Which I was like, wait a minute. That's not how it works. But yeah, I mean, what did you think?
You know, there's this weird genre that I want to dive deeper into, and I don't know what to call it. They name it in the show Love, where there's like it's a show on Netflix that Judd Apatow produced, and we've talked about that show before. Yeah, and they do like the song parodies where they like make songs up from movies and stuff. But there's like this genre that they name, and it's in it, and I've like gone back into the show to try to find it, because when I heard them talk about it, I'm like, I know what they're talking about. Yeah. And I should have written it down, but I'm gonna have to like watch the whole show again to figure out what it is. But it's like this genre of like romance horror.
Yeah.
Where it's like the draw is that it's like that it is a romance, but it is also a horror. But it's not a true like a rom-com, and it's not a true horror either. So like what's the Glenn Close movie?
Fatal Attraction.
Fatal Attraction. Like
like the like sexual kind of like adult thriller.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I said adult thriller in inverted commas.
But it's like I want to find all of these movies that kind of like exist in this category and like watch all of them and compare them and stuff. And
don't exist anymore. Like there's not really this kind of
they do
filmmaking.
There's been a few. There was one that had. They do still exist, surprisingly. But not as like they're not always super popular, and I don't think they've ever been super popular.
Yeah.
There's always some kind of draw. It's got to have like a big name actor or director or something like that. I mean, obviously this one was Clint Eastwood, but there was this isn't very recent, but the movie Obsessed from 2009 with Beyonce. It's kind of the same like romance horror. I don't know if y'all have heard of that, but
I haven't.
There's like weird movies that I know about from working in the movie theater. I swear that's the only reason why. But Idris Elba and Beyonce.
I haven't even seen that poster.
It's from 2009.
That seems so... Wow.
And I forgot that Idris Elba was even the actor in it.
So are we sort of like thinking of like the erotic thriller? Is that kind of
exactly. Yeah, that would be a good thing to call it. I've been trying to figure out what is the name of this genre.
Yeah.
And so I mean like this is exactly the kind of film that I've been wanting to watch more of, just to kind of dissect it as a genre. And what's interesting is that it's the kind of movie that even watching it, what has it been, 50 years since it came out?
Yeah.
You can kind of, at least for me, like I can like hear the audience, even though like it's just the three of us sitting and watching it. There's certain moments in the movie where I hear the audience reacting.
Yeah.
Like I can just imagine people watching this in 1971 and reacting to certain moments. And maybe it's because I've spent so much time in movie theaters watching audience react to things. But it was a fun movie. It was a really fun movie.
Yeah.
And like the climax of the movie when she is when they finally have their fight, when Clint Eastwood and what's her name?
Evelyn.
Yeah,
Jessica
Evelyn.
Walter.
Jessica Walter, who was awesome in the movie, by the way.
Oh my gosh.
When they're having their fight, at the end, and he, like, you think that he's gonna stab her, you think that he's gonna murder her or something, but he just punches her in the face. He just punches her in the face, and that's what kills her. And she flips backwards over she breaks through a window, flips backwards over the balcony, and then falls off a cliff. And I can just hear people in the audience waiting for that moment. And when she gets punched in the face, they're like, "Woo!" It's like, it's obviously this was made 50 years ago, but it's moments like that where it's interesting. It's like building up to a moment where you can get an audience to clap for a man to punch a woman in the face is is pretty interesting. Yeah.
Because the whole way through that fight sequence, I was like, do something, man. Like, come on. Like, because I know she had a knife, and I know that she was, like, popping out, and, like, it was kind of... But he was just, like, kind of shouldering herself. And then when, like, he threw that punch, I was like, here we go. And then I was like, oh. I guess not. Yeah, like, just that one punch, and that's all it takes.
Yeah. This is going to sound really terrible, but... Never mind, I'm not even gonna say it now. I missed the moment.
So Zach, what did you think?
I really liked it. I mean, I have to believe that this was a popular film. I mean, 1971. This is Clint Eastwood was in 3 movies that year.
Okay.
This, The Beguiled, and Dirty Harry. And I don't know where Dirty Harry.
What a year!
71.
Yeah, blimey.
Yeah.
I was wondering about that because there's a line in the movie where he's like, "You're some cop" or something like that,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
And I don't know the release schedule. I don't know what came out first or when, and I don't know exactly where it ranks. But I know Dirty Harry, I'm pretty sure, was in the top 10 highest-grossing movies of that year. I don't know where.
Yeah.
So he's a popular person. You know, he's a popular movie figure. He doesn't need to play, at least in 1971, a character. Like he is allowed to be a character where the characters are paper thin. You know, he's just a DJ who loves sex because it is. I think it's always been weird to me because Clint Eastwood has always been an old man to me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, he's been an old man as long as I've been alive.
Yeah.
And so it's weird to think of him as a sex symbol, but I presume that he was.
I mean, he spent quite a lot of time just wandering around without his shirt off.
Yes, and
like you were saying, like the audience reaction, like it must have been included to be like, we need to tick that box for your fans,
right?
Kind of thing.
But I also think what's interesting is I'm trying to think because at least with the stuff from the 70s, I lose track of what movies Clint Eastwood directed and which ones he didn't. Like once the 70s hit, but what I thought was interesting was you have this somewhat, maybe not extended, but you've got this moment where because Clint Eastwood, as far as I know, is a jazz fan. So you've got this just a scene at the Monterey Jazz Festival of them recording, and it's just just letting the musicians have their moment and play.
You can tell that they probably got to this point. They were like, this is just under 90 minutes.
Oh yeah.
How can we bulk this up so that it's a 90-minute plus movie? And there's those. I mean, especially the extended nature hike.
Yes. Which I love. Talking about this movie as an erotic thriller is it's not very erotic, but that sequence is, I guess, as close to eroticism as you get.
Yeah.
It's so erotic.
But it actually felt very tame for something from 1971.
Yeah, exactly.
In the late 60s, early 70s is sort of where I expect. Maybe the Woodstock influence to kind of be more prevalent in film, but there were times where it felt like the Carmel by the Sea Chamber of Commerce tourism community.
Yeah.
I know he was the mayor of Carmel.
Yeah, I was going to say. So me and my wife for a while toyed with the idea of getting married in Carmel.
Okay.
So we kind of traveled down there. We spent a little bit of time around there, and it is beautiful. Yeah. It is so great, and we ate at a restaurant he once owned, and stuff like that. So as soon as it was they're in Carmel, I was like, get ready, because it's not going to leave the main street and the houses on the beach.
Right. Wait, so I don't know this story. So he was the mayor
of this small
Clint
town.
Mm-hmm. Was the mayor.
Yes. Not when this film was made. I think it was in the mid-'80s. But that's where he lived.
After.
That's where he lived.
Yeah.
So
he probably had lived there for a while, and he's like, we need to make a movie here. I'm going to direct a movie.
I can't imagine. I can't imagine that the budget was very big. When I was watching it, I was like, "This seems very kind of small crew, just shooting on location." I think there was one scene where he was walking down the street early on with his ex girlfriend, and I think someone literally turns and looks at him, and it's like, "Oh my god," and it's you can just tell that it was just very the budget probably went on the glass being shattered and the red paint. That was used
do you think that was his real house that he shot in then?
I when I watched it, I was like, who would have chose this house?
Because this guy has
a nightmare.
This guy
to film
makes
around.
Pretty good money for
exactly.
a radio.
Yeah. But then again, it is falling down. There's no roof over the first room you come into.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lake running through it, like you said. There's like trees in the middle of the house. You know, maybe it was just this abandoned house that they kind of moved in on.
I mean, I like his bedroom, his
Yeah,
sort of the yellow wallpaper
Wow.
of his bedroom and his matching pants.
Yeah,
At one point.
and the giant poster of a pig
Oh yeah.
that he stands next to for quite a while. I'm like, are we supposed to draw a resemblance between him and this pig, or is that just like just there because it's covering a crack in the wall that they were like, oh, we need to cover that up?
Yeah, and it wouldn't make sense if the budget is pretty low. Well, one, I imagine there are plenty of actors, filmmakers who love it when they don't have to drive very far to get to work. They like filming in their backyard if they can. But considering that this was his first, his directorial debut, it would not surprise me that that us financiers might not necessarily have faith in him as a director.
Yeah,
you're an actor. You don't get too big for your britches, sort of thing, and think that you can be behind the camera too. So I think that there was, probably a lot of restrictions in terms of, or the making of the film.
He's like, you don't understand. This is going to be the next Citizen Kane.
Well, and, I don't think he's ever been that pretentious about his directing.
Yeah.
Like he's famous for filming very quickly.
Yeah.
I don't know how that
one take, right?
Yeah,
pretty much.
He does one take. He films a lot of movie. I can't speak to like his bigger films, like his war movies, and I don't know exactly how this would play out on a Western, but something like this, anytime he's made a contemporary film, it always seems like, I'd say it was filmed in 30 days, and he's very quick. Now, I don't know what kind of experience he had in the making of this, but he does also seem like a guy who was always kind of paying attention to what his directors were doing. Unforgiven, I remember, has like a credit thanking like a dedication to Sergio Leone and Don Siegel, the director of Dirty Harry. So I think he was probably pretty close with them in terms of like getting advice on what do I do when I'm behind the camera. Yeah,
and I'm sure, like, being in Carmel, he felt safe. Like, he knew it. Like, he'd be like, okay, we can go and shoot here. I know this location. Because there's some really visually striking images from this film. I mean, the one that like really kind of blew me away was the close-up of them walking on the beach with the waves crashing behind. And it was just like, it was just a perfect like image storytelling of what they were going through. You know, this like life-changing, like totally uncontrollable thing. And I was like, hey, that for a first-time director, that's great. Like, that's awesome. You know, so
there were a lot of very visually like striking shots and cinematic shots. Like, it was shot very well. The thing that I noticed like early on was like all the long shots where they've got like a long lens on the camera, and they either zoom, like they're wide and then they zoom close in, or they're just like already zoomed in, but you can tell they're very far away to like give this feeling that they're being watched or something like that.
I knew that we were going to get like a super zoom into the background and she was going to be there.
And see, there's a lot of shots like that where I feel like it could have so easily been cheesy, and to some degree it was, but I don't know if it's because it's Clint Eastwood that it just didn't feel as cheesy. I mean, there's like a shot where he's walking with his girlfriend through the woods, and you see the other girl's hand come in the side of the shot and reach for them. And it's like, that's pretty cheesy. But it worked. You know what I mean?
It did.
Like, so
I think that Jessica Walter was just, her eyes had like the acting that she like, just the kind of, you could see that she was trying to turn like normal back on. You know, she would get to that point and she'd be like, I've got to become normal again. And she was incredible.
Yeah, she was really good.
I think Eastwood himself was a little stiff.
Yeah.
I mean, there's the scene where he meets, I don't know if it's his agent or like someone that's trying to get him the next radio gig.
He's trying to. I think he's trying to get hired by.
Yeah.
I got the impression it was like a national or a larger scale radio station.
Yeah, and the camera like pans across like to them mid conversation, and she says, "Haha, that was so funny." And I'm like, this man has never told a joke before in his life. That is the least believable thing in this movie, that she would find something he said funny, because all the way through he's just like, very kind of angry. I just can't imagine him cracking a joke ever. So
Eastwood is someone who doesn't need to be giving a good performance as long as he's in the Eastwood persona.
Mm-hmm.
That's like what he's a star more than he's an actor. But he's not a funny guy. I couldn't. His jokes sort of end at the empty chair at the Republican National Convention, which is not very funny.
There was another shot that that really got me. I think it got all of us, where he's supposed to be going on a date with his girlfriend, right? And this crazy woman is in his house, and she convinces him to stay, and he holds her, and he just has this dead look in his eyes, like, God damn it, this woman. And then it just is like a slow transition to like this. I don't even know if it goes from like this dead look to just like this sad, dark look.
Yeah.
It's like supposed to be later at night, but like that transition to me was so funny. Like that's one of those things where it's like, I thought it was hilarious. I know you guys thought it was hilarious, but I'm just, there's certain things where an audience cheered, and then certain things where you're like, I wonder what they did in this moment.
Yeah.
And that's one of them, was like, did everyone bust out laughing when when it just slowly zooms in on him and he's just dead inside?
I think so. It had to have been because, as far as I know, Eastwood's reputation as a screen star at this point was as this kind of hard ass.
Yeah.
Right. So even if, again, I don't know what the order of the releases were, but something like The Beguiled is playing off this idea of tough guy Eastwood is injured and he is surrounded by a bunch of like teenage girls, basically, young women. And it's like, oh my God, the tough guy surrounded by all these doting women or whatever.
It reminds me of the Buster Keaton stone face.
Yeah.
Because he was famous for like getting into these situations that are just ridiculous, and the audience is laughing because he just has this stone look on his face.
Yeah.
Right.
Where it's like, is that the same thing? Like, is that the Clint Eastwood persona, maybe?
Yeah.
Like,
I just don't think he played it very well. I think that it was meant to be like, as an audience, you were like, he's trapped. But, like, he played it so dead-eyed that you're like, he's just mentally, like, somewhere else. He's in the woods with this ex-girlfriend of his. Like, he doesn't want to be there at all. I mean, he slept with her a lot more than I was anticipating. Like, because I thought that, like, maybe it'd be, like, the one time and he was like this... Like, it didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, because there's like he had already broken it off once or twice, and then he comes home and she's standing there outside his house, and she asks him like if she can come in or something, and she
just wants a Coke.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm really beat, and then she just like takes her robe off and she's naked.
And he's like,
okay. Yeah, he's like, he just like puts a robe on. He's like, get in here.
And he brings the Snoopy in as well, which I was like, that's the embarrassing thing. He doesn't want neighbors to see that outside his house.
And maybe that's what generates the laugh in the scene.
Yeah.
I don't know. Clint Eastwood grabbing the giant Snoopy doll.
Yeah.
Well, and then he like kisses it at one point.
Yeah, exactly. Even though he's been wide awake like literally a second before, he rolls over and kisses a Snoopy, and then he's like, "Wait a minute, this is not a beautiful woman."
Oh man.
Have either of you seen Every Which Way But Loose?
No.
Is that one of his?
He's in it. He didn't direct it. I don't. I only know it as in parody form from the critic. But it is a movie, to the best of my knowledge, it's from 1978, that pairs Clint Eastwood up with an orangutan. I want to say it's like a buddy cop movie, like a buddy cop comedy.
I've seen
maybe like Turner and a precedent to Turner and Hooch, but instead of a dog, it's an orangutan. I remember there being a parody of the in the critic where the orangutan. It's the sequel. And the orangutan starts kissing him while he's in bed, and he thinks it's just, he's like, oh, I'm going to keep my eyes closed for this, because he thinks it's a woman. Something like that. I don't know if he kisses the orangutan in Every Which Way But Loose, but like Clint Eastwood, in terms of like him being funny, it's any scenario where he's the straight man.
I don't think him cracking jokes
he's not
would
cracking
be,
jokes,
exactly. If he was in a comedy, you'd be like, oh dear, this is not good. But yeah, it's him as, the exasperated, like, police officers. Oh, can't we just get the work done?
Yeah.
What do you guys think to the soundtrack? Because
it was terrible.
Yeah.
The music choices were very odd. I was like, what's going on? Like, especially towards the climax of the movie, whenever he shows up and he sees the dead police officer, and it's just like,
he's like, no more men, just 2 women for me.
I didn't like the music. I will say though, it seemed like there was less music than like there were. I feel like movies from this era have a lot more music than this movie had.
You think of that Halloween, like, that seems to happen every few minutes in Halloween.
Yeah, and but even just like this sort of like that late 60s, early 70s, like montages with kind of like weird editing, and there would be just some sort of poppy, jazzy instrumental between scenes, and there is that sort of in this movie, but it is a lot less intrusive. I think the bigger surprise to me is that the movie is basically named after a song. And I don't seem to remember the song being featured very prominently in the movie itself. Yeah. I'm surprised that Misty was not such a recurring theme. I would think that you'd almost build the whole thing around that, create alterations, alternate the theme or something like that. I was recently watched The Long Goodbye, a Robert Altman movie from 1974, I think, and there's they wrote a song for the movie. Misty is the real song. Misty predates this movie, but they wrote a song for The Long Goodbye called The Long Goodbye, and it just plays throughout the whole movie, like as the muzak in the grocery store. There's like different versions of it on the radio as the score and stuff like that. And so I was kind of surprised that Misty does not appear as just kind of like the overall theme music of this movie.
Yeah, because you think that a good composer, like having a go at this, it could start off like very innocuous, like not really be like anything special. But then as the movie continues and it starts to become her theme, it becomes more sinister.
Yeah,
and we've seen that before with like horror films. That seems to happen a lot. Like you get like the longer the theme happens, the more you're like, oh god, here we go. But the thing I found interesting was that the only non-organic music was the scene in the woods. Everything else came from a radio or from like
the live performance.
Yeah, exactly. It was a weird. A weird choice. I don't know. I don't know whether like that one scene was to show like he's actually like trying to think of the right words. Like this is what he wants because it's like kind of like otherworldly kind of thing. Whereas when he first sleeps with I forget her name. Oh my gosh,
Jessica Walter.
Yes, when he first sleeps with her, Evelyn, it's very like muffled, and it's kind of like you shouldn't be there. It's like you're just kind of standing there watching. It's very awkward. I didn't, Whereas in the woods, it's more like, oh, this is like they're very happy together.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, I really liked the. I don't know how much of this is just what Carmel looks like. This is what
Yeah.
the 70s looked like, but I did love the production design. The use of color is really great. Like the first time he goes into what's the name of the bar? The Anchovy Box.
Oh my gosh, what was it? It was
sardines.
The sardine. Oh my gosh, it was like
Okay, so he goes into this
Yeah,
bar and
the
like
sardine.
the like Jessica Walter's sitting there in the back at the end of the bar in like she's in green or yellow, but it's completely different from the rest of the room.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of really great color choices with that, with color choices with costumes in relation to the set, the I don't know how much of these are actually sets, but these locations, pretty much every scene in his apartment, I loved the way it looked.
Yeah.
Obviously, as an apartment, it's like, who's living in this place? But it's all very aesthetically pleasing, and photographs very well. And even when he first recognizes, I guess he thinks it's his ex-girlfriend, but it's just one of the roommates, I guess. He recognizes the green dress. Costume choices, I thought, were all really, really like just unique, standing out.
Yeah, I feel like the 70s is when modern filmmaking began.
Yeah.
Because there's something about and it can probably be found earlier than that, but there's something about like the average movie from the 70s that where like the camera work and the lighting are done in such a way that just continued on. Like especially the lighting, I feel like. But I mean, it's like, I guess maybe it's like going to actual locations and less like shooting movies on sets. But then still doing the same kind of like set lighting that you would do in a studio, but you're on a location. So I love any movie from the 70s. I feel like anything that comes out of that era, I'm going to get something great out of it.
Yeah, it feels very of its time. I think it's like if you wanted to be like, hey, what was the 70s like? This film would be great. Because there's a lot of talk of free love. There's a lot of like awesome jazz music. Just like it's much more modern than what had been made 10 years before. It's crazy to think like this was the world that was now being projected and was like socially acceptable. And I think like it really like gets the time really well. Like I feel like that's what the 70s in Carmel was like.
Yeah. Sweet. There's this quote here from Clint Eastwood. After 17 years of bouncing my head against the wall, hanging around sets, maybe influencing certain camera setups with my own opinions, watching actors go through all kinds of hell without any help, and working with both good directors and bad ones, I'm at the point where I'm ready to make my own pictures. I stored away all the mistakes I made and saved up all the good things I learned, and now I know enough to control my own projects and get what I want out of actors.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think any of us would say it's a perfect movie.
Yeah.
I think that as a debut, it's very assured. There wasn't a point in it that was like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Like that's not kind of what I would expect. It was very.
You could tell it was
well
a
done.
hit. Like you could tell it was like it was for
And
the mainstream. It was for a large audience, and that, like people had a good time watching it. I'm sure.
Yeah. And there was some really, like especially I think of the climax, like when he's racing to the house and the camera's kind of like under the dash, like pointing up at him, and it's very choppy. I was like, that's really good filmmaking.
Yeah.
I mean, by this point, he's lucky that I say lucky, but he's been in the industry as an actor well, like he said, he's worked with, in his quote, he's worked with good directors, he's worked with bad directors. So he's seen people make mistakes. He's seen the way good directors work. So he sort of knows what, at the very least, probably knows what he shouldn't do. And Eastwood's ego is interesting because he's not pretentious, like I said, in like like you were saying, like this was a hit. Yes, he is a populist filmmaker. Like he wants to make a movie that people are going to go see and have a good time. They're going to enjoy. He's not up his own ass in kind of like an artistic sense. You know, he doesn't think he's like this artiste. He's an entertainer, but there is that ego of like, I'm Clint Eastwood. I fuck everybody in this movie. You know, I was sort of saying this earlier, like that Eastwood as a sex symbol is very strange to me, but even it extends into his old man years.
Yeah. I mean, when this movie started, I was like, he's already old.
Yeah.
He's 41 in this, or 40 in this. Wait, 41 in this movie. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And he's like, he's already.
Well, yeah, because he's 91 now, right?
Yeah.
And both of the women look early 20s.
Yeah.
Like max, you know.
But I mean, fairly recently, sometime earlier this year, I watched Bridges of Madison County for the first time, which is Eastwood directed movie in the 90s, 1996, I think, 95 or 96. So he's in his 60s then. Approximately, and he's a romantic lead, and it's like he's directing and he's starring, and it's like Clint takes off his shirt and Meryl Streep swoons. You know, that's like there is an ego to a guy who likes, but in The Mule he gives himself he's 80 something and he has 2 threesomes with much younger women, so there is an ego.
I feel like he's got this publicist that's just a little scared of him still, and he's like, "Are you sure it's okay that I have sex with them?" She's like, "Sure, like okay, that sounds good, Clint. Like whatever you say." And he's just like, "Yeah, I am still this sex symbol from the '70s. Like people are still going to go and see it." I'm
eager to see. He's going down to Mexico in Cry Macho.
Yeah.
So I'm very eager to see.
Well, the trailer itself, like we just watched it, and there's that weird like touching hands of like him and like a 40-year-old like mother of 3.
Oh yeah.
And it's so weird. It's like that's like what is happening?
She's 40 and he's 50 years older than her.
Yeah. Well, and he's got this 14, 15-year-old kid at his side, like who is we're sort of seeing the story of a boy becoming a man. Mm-hmm. There may be a trip to the brothel. I don't know.
Oh my gosh! I would not be surprised.
But
well, he even punches someone in the face in the trailer, and I'm like, "You broke your wrist."
that was in him.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, just like he punches Jennifer Walter in this.
Yeah.
Jessica Walter.
Yeah.
I'll never live this down that I don't get her name right, but
she was awesome in the movie. And by the way, the movie was only nominated for one thing, and it was for a Golden Globe Best Actress, Jessica Walter.
Good.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, not good that it was only nominated for one, because I think that she deserved
But if it was
going to
be nominated for anything, like her getting a nomination for Best Actress was a good choice.
I feel at this time, though, there's a lot of talk about Hitchcock and the fact that he wasn't really revered in his time. Because people just saw it as like popcorn entertainment. I mean, even the tagline, like "the scream you hear may be your own," it's very. I think it's feeding into. I don't think it would have been award contenders. I think it was like a popcorn movie. That like young people that were dating were like, "Hey, let's go and see this movie." And, like the tagline is, you're gonna scream. Like that's the point. So. The fact that she got nominated is, I think, great credit to her, because she from the start, she was like all you could pay attention to, kind of thing.
Yeah, she's the true standout of the movie.
Yeah. Was anyone surprised that she was the roommate?
I was a little surprised. I thought. Well, I heard someone say Evelyn as a roommate earlier, but then the name wasn't Evelyn.
Yeah.
So then I was like, confused.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened.
So
there.
I never like to try and like outpace the movie. I'm never trying to like outsmart it or figure things out. I'm trying to just kind of let it go. But it occurred to me right before the reveal.
Okay.
So it's not something that crossed my mind before it was revealed, but right before it was revealed, I was like, "Oh shit! She's Annabelle, isn't she?"
See, this is the problem. I think like my analytical brain for that kind of stuff is that like as soon as they were at that jazz concert and the two roommates were like, "Hey, we're gonna go and meet this other roommate," I was like, "Why is this in here? Like this film is so tight. There's nothing in it that like apart from her friend." The like ex-girlfriend's friend that's in it for like a minute that he's like really homophobic to, and then you never see him again. There's nothing in that movie that is that could be cut. So I was like, why? And then that's when it I was like, of course she's gonna be the roommate.
Yeah. I guess I'm just slow. I don't know. I'm never, I'm not a very plotty person. Like I'm never thinking of plot. I'm always kind of like just like sucking in the picture and the sound. So like,
well, I mean, it's like it's one of those things too where, like, I kind of do both. Like sometimes I'll get ahead of it, sometimes I don't.
Yeah.
But when things like that do happen, I'm delightfully surprised. I guess I'm not like that came out of nowhere. It's more just like
I think that it must come from somewhere as a kid because I can remember when Phantom Menace came out.
Yeah.
And the poster of Anakin like looking down the shadow is Vader behind him. Like before I saw the film, I wrote a novelization based on that poster because I was like, I know what's going to happen. I'm going to guess it. This is what's going to happen, and it was wrong because of course it was. Like if I'd come up with like Trade Federation stuff, then I would have been like a very weird. 8-year-old?
Yeah.
I bet that novel was better than the movie.
I don't know.
I don't know. It's a good movie. I'll defend it.
But yeah, I don't know what it is. Like I'm always trying to figure out where the pieces are going to connect.
Yeah.
And maybe that's like why I have a hard time with people like David Lynch, is because he's not linear like that. It's not like everything's going to be tied up at the end in a bow. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I really like that.
So what you're saying is the next time I'm on the show, we're watching a David Lynch movie.
I watched Blue Velvet quite recently, so yeah.
Oh, we'll watch the Twin Peaks movie.
Okay.
But Weird Al was able to figure out the plot of the Phantom Menace just by like visiting websites before the movie came out.
Wow.
I figured it all out and wrote a song about it. But
a genius.
I mean, everybody knew Vader was going to be, or Anakin would be Vader someday later.
I like you say, it's like even when I do kind of, I don't like the term outsmart the movie, but that's like what if it occurs to me like where it's going, what's going to happen, beforehand. I think that like you said, Brandon, it's sort of like it's like a pleasant surprise, especially if I like that idea. You know what I mean? If it's something where it's like, oh no, is this where this is going to go? Or it's like, are they going to go there? Are they going to go there? It kind of depends on how you feel about the decision. Whether or not you figured it out is sort of irrelevant to what you actually, do you like that choice or not?
Yeah. Well, in the moment like that one where the roommate turns out to be her and she walks in from the shadow carrying the tray of tea, I guess it is.
Yeah.
I'm delightfully surprised because in my mind I hear the audience going,
yeah.
So I'm internally doing that. But yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. Just seeing if there's any other cool trivia about this movie. But yeah, it was good.
It's Lewis's grandmother's favorite film.
Well, yeah, I can remember, like I said to you guys earlier, she watched a lot of kind of horror films on her own, not quite horror, but like thrillers. And I don't know why this stuck with me that she was one that she watched, I guess, and yeah, every time I watch it, I'm just like, man, living on your own, like especially like if it had been a little bit secluded and watching this film would be like creepy.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of the whole point, is like they're in the house in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah, I mean, and it's like 2 years after the Manson murders.
Yeah.
And,
Wow.
yeah. Like, that had to be in people's...
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone's, subconscious, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, that hadn't even occurred.
I mean, it just makes me glad I'm not dating.
Yeah.
Like, like, I don't know, there's like this scene of her taking the key and making a copy of the key. And
that was the
car.
scariest thing
Yeah.
of the film. It's just like, oh my god.
Aren't you so glad you're not a sexy disc jockey that everybody wants?
Who plays smooth jazz.
Yeah.
Well,
I would like his car though. He had a very nice car.
cool car.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as what's interesting too is like there's a lot of like scary moments in this movie that are not played as scary moments. Like the making of the key, the duplicate of the key is, I don't know, the way it's not filmed or presented as a horror moment, but it's kind of that just sort of straightforward way of she's going out and she's making a copy of this key and then hiding it, and making sure it works and hiding it, and it's like it makes that feel. I think it just makes it feel more real by not like playing it like a horror movie would.
Yeah. Even her note was like, "Hey, I took your keys."
Yeah.
And it was, before, you would have thought of any other film, he'd be like, "Where are my keys?"
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas this, it was like, "Hey, I've took your keys."
Yeah. There's no kind of like, "Oh, I'm gonna leave and where's my car? Where are my keys?"
Exactly.
There's no kind of like, what is this, like his cleaning lady just like finds the note, right?
Yeah, is she
and
okay? Like, where do we end
How
with
is
that?
she alive?
I don't know. She got slashed to ribbons.
Yeah.
And then the one thing she said... the one thing, I mean, talk about one-note characters. She literally, on her dying breath, is, "I'm not cleaning this up." It's like, what?
It's like, how are you not dead?
Yeah.
You just got... Bates.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Oh, man. But as soon as she was introduced, I was like, "I'm sorry, I can tell you're gonna die. Like, there's no one else that's gonna die.
Yeah.
It's gonna be you."
Yeah.
Man.
But she didn't die.
I mean, didn't she? I don't know. Like, they were talking like later as if she had died.
Oh, they were?
I don't know
I
if it was
missed
like
that,
an
I guess.
exact line, but I'm sure like
Yeah, she's dead.
there's like after what happened to like the housekeeper. I don't know if she had an official name.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just, I thought she was dead, and then she spoke, and I was like, oh, maybe she's not. And then no one ever was like, not even, she's fine.
Yeah.
That's all it would have taken, 2 words, but nothing. So she lived a very happy life, let's say, and recovered well, and yeah.
Got a better job.
Yeah, exactly. Stop cleaning his house,
Well, I'm curious how much of this, to what extent the film has its roots in reality, because the writer of the movie, Joe Hames, was I guess a friend of Clint Eastwood. They were sort of both up and coming at the same time.
Yeah.
And she based the character off of someone she knew, the Jessica Walter character.
Wow.
So,
But I mean, this kind of thing, I'm not surprised. I mean, we've talked about Misery already.
yeah,
And like, when you get, I'm sure for Clint, this was starting to play on his mind a little bit, is that now he was becoming a big superstar.
yeah,
And people were starting to become, for lack of a better word, slightly obsessed with him.
yeah.
Like, I'm sure there will have been people that might have tried to like track him down or like meet him by accident,
Right.
and start that relationship. It's the same like with Stephen King. Like, he has a fan that's obsessed with him that will literally keep him like chained to the bed.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess that's something that hasn't gone away.
Yeah.
The stan culture
Yeah.
of today. It's stans.
What?
That's like what hardcore fans are called now.
I just think of the Eminem song "Stan."
Yeah,
Is that where it comes from?
Yeah.
Okay,
so,
cool.
do you know the Eminem song "Stan"?
I don't think so.
Okay, Eminem, some 20 years ago.
Eminem who? I'm just
Eminem,
kidding.
Marshall Mathers wrote a song called "Stan," which was inspired by fan mail,
Okay.
obsessive fan mail. So the premise of the song is an obsessed fan named Stan who is
Gotcha.
writing him letters. And Stan has become a term for kind of like super fans,
Right.
people who are obsessed with. So
That's messed up. Like, I don't know what.
Oh, it's
like,
very bizarre that you know.
Yeah, that's the character. They're like, hey, I'm going to adopt his mantra. Because at the end of the song, he literally drives, like, he drinks, like, himself to the point where he drives him and his girlfriend off a bridge.
Yeah.
Because Eminem's not returning his letters.
I don't know the etymology of like the current usage, but I assume that at a certain point it was used like derisively, and then it became embraced.
Yeah.
Or it just became such a part of the lexicon that it was unavoidable. And now I mean, you know, I don't know, do 13-year-olds who call themselves Stans know the origin of the word? Probably not. But I mean, that's basically the character that that she is. Yeah.
Yeah. So so I know that we've talked about Misery a lot. If you were given the chance to watch, I know that we've just watched it, so it's going to be hard.
Mm-hmm.
But if you could watch Play Misty for Me or Misery, which one would you choose?
I would watch Misery.
Never seen Misery.
Okay, cool. I'll add it to the list. I would choose Misery too.
Misery is what, you know, Rob Reiner has like a weird period where he's a good director and then it kind of falls off. And that's a good film. And Barry Sonnenfeld was the cinematographer. I want to say that might have been the last film he was the DP of before he started directing. I can't remember. But that is a movie that looks great. Like it's just a wonderful film in its construction, and it seems like it does more with. I guess it's basically three characters. It's the author, her, and like the sheriff.
Yeah.
Who's like reading the books and trying to figure it out. I mean, there's other characters, but those are kind of like I feel like it does more with those three. Those three characters feel more like alive than any of the characters in this movie.
Agree. Yeah.
And it's kind of like I don't know. I guess I hesitate to describe either of these films as realistic, but I like I don't think there's anything realistic about Misery. It's incredibly stylized. Yeah. Even just in its premise of the kidnapping and the sort of, you know, mutilation that she does to him, that is just entertaining to watch versus this, which is, it's not that it's realistic, but it's far less stylized. It's maybe a little bit, you know, I don't know if a jazz disc jockey getting laid so much is, I don't know, you know. But I definitely prefer Misery over this.
I feel like if you were to watch Misery and then it was on TV a few days later, I don't know if I would sit down and watch it again. Whereas I feel like, I mean, in terms of like, because I knew what was coming. Yeah. Like I would be like, okay, I've just seen this. Like it's still fresh in my memory. Like everything is ingrained into my brain. Yeah. Whereas for Play Misty for me, I think that it's one of those films that you could easily watch like a lot and it not lose anything because it's very surface level anyway. It's very kind of there front and center. It's like, hey, she's obsessive. He's in love with somebody else. He's trying to break away. How's it going to end? Like, you know how it's going to end. So I don't think there's much to it under the surface. It's not like trying to tell, you know, anything else than, you know, what it tells.
Yeah. And slightly being artistic.
Yeah, yeah. For sure. There's touches there. I mean,
you should watch Misery.
Yeah.
It's a good movie.
I will watch it.
Yeah.
Came out in 1990, the year I was born. So.
Yeah, so I that probably was the last film Barry Sonnenfeld shot before he became a director, because I think Addams Family is 91.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, Misery is another film that my mum and dad made me watch before I went to film school, and the ankle scene.
Another film very well parodied by the critic.
Yeah.
Buy my book is a line that it's something that I say to myself all the time.
Well, cool. Brandon, do you have anything else you want to add about Play Misty for me?
I don't think so, but I think I might take my girlfriend on a date to the woods.
Yeah,
sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Just in the rivers and
Yeah.
you know,
Yes, I mean,
the nature. You know, the greatest place to just get naked and.
yeah, it was very biblical to me. It just looked
yeah.
like Adam and Eve. It was just like they're the only two people in the world.
You could always just go to the lagoon in the middle of your apartment.
Maybe that's where it was set. Maybe it was just the living room that we didn't see.
Oh yeah, that was just the side of the living room you never saw.
Exactly.
It made me want to watch like the Monterey jazz documentaries.
Yeah.
The Monterey pop documentaries.
Yeah.
And it made me want to visit Carmel.
Yeah.
I joke that this is like feels like it was paid for by the the Carmel Chamber of Commerce, but it's a good ad for come visit Carmel. I don't know what Carmel looks like now, but
I mean, pretty similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just, like you said about the jazz fest and everything like that, seeing Clint kind of try and like boogie and then stop. And there's a point where he like shimmied into his seat and then he was instantly straight. It was, and he was wearing a button that was like where his other buttons were. It wasn't even like whimsically placed. It was just like on where his other buttons were. And I was like, come on, man, like at least show a little bit of like color, like a little bit of character.
I noticed he was very, very red-faced in this movie. He's very, very sunburned.
Maybe, I mean, that's Carmel for you. Maybe he's just like...
Going to the beach every day.
I mean,
like, I fell asleep.
That's the pleasure of being able to make a movie.
Yeah.
In your, where you live.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
You just drive 5 minutes to set.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts from you, Lewis?
I mean, before we go, Brennan, just promise me one thing.
Okay.
Just play Misty for me.
I will. But I hope Dave likes what he sees when he gets here. Because that's what he's taking to hell with him.
That was a weird line. But, I mean...
I was like really hoping she was just gonna like mutilate the fuck out of her, and then he was gonna walk in and she was gonna be like
limbs akimbo.
Yeah. It was just gonna be full on just horror movie.
Yeah, but no.
Nah.
She just cut her hair.
Yeah.
A little bit. Which looked like a wig the whole way through anyway.
Yeah.
So
she cut her wig.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, everybody. Well, until your next religious experience, keep watching movies. We'll let you know what we're watching next week. So stay tuned, and we'll let you know. Try to get back out to the cinemas when you feel it's safe, and go see some movies.
Yeah. And Zach, thank you for being a part of this and taking the time to watch this film with us. It's been awesome having you on.
Yeah, man.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
pleasure being here.
Thank you for bringing the Blu-ray.
Yes.
Yeah.
It looks great.
Yeah. Physical media is still important.
Kino Lorber.
There we go.
They've just put it out like 2 years ago or a year ago. So
Sweet.
Still readily available.
Yeah. Is this the 50th anniversary?
Yeah, it must be. Yeah, because 1971,
yeah.
it's 2021, folks.
I'm a big fan of anniversaries. I like celebrating films.
Yeah.
Oh, hold on. All right, we're still on.
Cool.
Just had an error pop up.
The end.
Yeah, I was. There was something that had an anniversary this year, and then this thing popped up with an error, and I couldn't remember what it was. It was an error in my brain. All right, folks. Till next week, say your cinema prayers. Peace.
Bye.